answer. Or
So is
that
the
there,
same thing as having no meaning?
or that there is an answer, but it's completely alien to us, and that wouldn't really, like Nagel says how, maybe people are actually just being, like grown to like be eaten by a giant like cow or something like that. And like that could be the meaning, like the intention between our creation, or the intention of our creation. But
what is it with Thomas Nagel and animals?
I don't know if that was exactly what it was, but
Actually,
it was something like that. So like, even if our life did have meaning in that sense, it wouldn't necessarily help us with our feeling that the life is absurd.
I actually wanted to address the first word problem point as well. I think it's definitely true that this tends to come up more in people's lives where they have their basic necessities supplied to them. I mean, if someone's living every day hungry and trying to get enough food to eat so they can survive.
Their meaning of life is finding enough fucking food.
Yeah, so what the fuck are you talking about this philosophy tweet for? But I don't think that necessarily invalidates the question, because
it doesn't invalidate the question.
if they're trying to go get food, then once they have that food, and if they get enough food, then they.
I just think that the question comes from a very specific cultural place that Camus and we don't have to, but Camus and Nagel, I think, are treating as more universal than it actually is.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I think Manish has.
Yeah,
We're gonna start with the Pat now. So.
Well,
What's that?
yeah, I was wondering why I would have to turn. I don't know. I'm only trying to push forward my speaking because my question pertained to everything everyone was talking about at the very moment, because none of it it all makes sense to me. It's really confusing after the class on existentialism I took. Which was entirely Sartre based.
Well, that's a bad class in existentialism.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, Sartre took. Alright.
Sartre was
Is
the
that-
only one who came out and said he was an existentialist.
Of course, this is the class I took just because I wanted an existentialism class. The class I wanted to take was the Heidegger Kierkegaard class, which I had to drop because I got into chamber choir.
Okay.
That I think we're gonna class.
So.
But like, that entire class was focusing on the idea of that because it was more on the Nagel side. It was like, because the universe and life is futile, there's nothing to tell you what to do.
If there is no God, everything is permitted, basically.
Yeah.
Nothing is true, everything is permitted.
And then he went into, and then like I don't know what the deal was, but like the professor was pushing the idea, this is the happy side of existentialism.
No.
Well, is that all you're gonna say?
No, I just, if this is existentialism, then what is like all of everything that everyone says about existentialism? Isn't everyone just trying to do the same thing?
Yeah, in different ways.
But,
Well,
I don't know, like,
actually,
trying to
Camus actually denied that he was an existentialist. He thought that, Camus or Sartre and Kierkegaard, I believe, they talked about, how there is no God, everything is permitted, total freedom. But Camus would say that because he would say that that's actually a leap of faith or philosophical suicide of some sort, because you aren't, like, you're saying that everything is permitted, but that's presupposing that your own decisions are meaningful. Whereas, some people say that if God doesn't exist, then everything is prohibited, which also applies, or nothing is permitted, because there are no rules. There are no rules condoning anything in the same way that there are no rules prohibiting anything.
okay, well, I just want to, for reference, I'm going to ask, like, what did Heidegger and Kierkegaard say about existentialism? I never got to study them.
That might be a good topic for another day.
Yeah, we talked about that in a different philosophy.
I think Tyler.
We should
We
focus
talked
on
about that last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
Well, we had the whole thing on the binding, but that wasn't entirely
We should focus on the ones that were going for this week.
Is this the new hat?
Yep.
Brilliant. All right. Yeah.
As well.
Jeez, I can't even hear myself now. But basically, I'm taking an existentialism class now that we actually focused on both of these authors directly, one right after the other.
That's
And so, really the ideas that we came down to is that both of these people are saying, yes, your life is absurd, no one's life has any meaning whatsoever in the grand scheme of things. Life is devoid of meaning, but they're giving two different responses to it. Camus just saying, be like Sisyphus and shake your fist in open rebellion against the meaninglessness of your life. But Nagel's saying, just don't do that. If life has no meaning, that means nothing that we do matters, so eat, drink, and be merry, basically. Which I find is a lot better because it's an optimist versus a pessimist position.
But the pessimist position has the virtue of actually addressing reality in some meaningful way.
Well,
They both address the issue. They're just speaking in purely practical terms at this point.
At this
Yeah, so neither of them answer the question logically, but they're just to find out what the true answer is, but they're just saying what they think is the most practical. And I think Nagel's is much more practical than Camus, because as an optimist, you tend to live a healthier and happier life, regardless of what meaning it has. So that's the position I take. It's the exact same thing that I talked about Hilaritas
Did you have
a
something
few
to
weeks
say?
ago.
No.
oh, were you gonna say something?
I thought I saw your hand up. Maybe I was mistaken.
Oh, never mind. Okay. I'm not sure if addressing objective reality in any meaningful way is a virtue. Part of the reason I like Nagel's better is, part of the reason I like Nagel's better is because it sort of is taking the viewpoint that all of the things that a person is thinking of are related to their their senses and other such stimuli, and not necessarily thinking that there's anything outside of that. Because I mean, everything in my life has just been everything I've seen, smelled, tasted, heard, felt, experienced in some way like that. So I don't really have any conception of the whole huge universe or whatever. So that's why I think Camus isn't really maybe as thought out, I guess. It's sort of a reason I think it sort of relates to Christianity is because Christianity also has this idea of like this huge objective universe, but it's like a specific being that wants you to do stuff. And I think if you're going to take that viewpoint, then Christianity answers it a hell of a lot better than Camus does, because it says, oh, here's this book that this being tells you with these things that you want to do.
helpful tips for what to do in a universe that's immeasurably vaster than you are.
Yeah. Whereas Camus is just like, you should struggle toward the heights, but you don't have any conception of what those heights are, so you can't really do that.
Maybe you can say something and then we can break up into groups.
I think that both Camus and Nagel are worthy of praise insofar as they've both grasped something a very trenchant problem that I think a lot of people have or feel in their lives. Nagel, I think, has grasped the problem a little better than Camus, because Nagel treats it psychologically, whereas Camus makes these sweeping statements about external reality. I wasn't meaning to imply that addressing objective reality or something claiming to be objective reality was an inherent virtue to a philosophical position. Certainly I don't think that there's any necessary inherent virtue in interacting with or accepting reality.
It's a very Nagel-esque view.
But I think there's even less value in just ignoring it, or ignoring the concept of that entirely. My problem with both of them, well, basically my problem with both of them is that I think that I think that their premise is fatally flawed and completely wrong. But
Do you think life has meaning?
yes, obviously. But
Oh, that would explain why I have problems with art.
well, I also have a problem with Sark because he was a douchebag. Which Camus wasn't. Camus was, by all accounts, a much nicer person. A little bit of a bro, though. Cigarette.
He was a bro.
The cigarette and motorcycle thing was kind of the 40s and 50s French equivalent of a bro. But other than their premise being flawed, I think Camus' premise is flawed to a greater extent and in a greater variety of ways than Nagel's interpretation of that premise. But I think that going on what the premises are, Camus' solution is better because Camus, unlike necessarily any other outlook, Camus does seem to care a lot about this whole, as he's put up there, subjective man versus objective world thing. And if one cares a lot about that, one has to treat the objective world somehow in one's solution. One can't just say, oh, screw that objective world, I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry. That's a horrendously irresponsible attitude to take if you're already constructing it as Nagel is, and so Nagel's kind of justified in taking the position that he takes here. But if you are constructing it as having something to do with an ostensibly objective reality, it behooves you to deal with such reality, even if only to say, write it off, ignore it, fuck the real world, you can take that asshole.
I think that would
in
be more
your
like his.
solution.
Yeah.
So I think Camus' premise is more flawed, but from what the premises are, I like his solution better.
Okay. Well, maybe if you want to discuss this further in 2 or 3 groups, we can talk about which of these views is a more accurate way of conceptualizing the absurd, and which of these responses are more effective.
Oh,
These aren't necessarily the same question because maybe, well, here we have rebellion, revolt, and here we have irony. So, you could maybe say that the subjective view should revolt against the backward step, maybe. Or that maybe you could say that the objective world is objectively meaningless, but maybe you can live in it in irony. So maybe if you, for 2 questions, you can talk about which view is more accurate and which, pragmatically, which response is more accurate. So, does it sound good?
Yep.
Disperse.
Disperse.
Okay, who's discussing?
Let me make this